This is what most people see about John Carroll University, a Jesuit college in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is what I see as a visual media major studying archives. Come with me to the archives, where we can explore some of the history left unknown to almost the entire campus. One of my tasks as an intern involved studying our archives and any history of multicultural services at John Carroll. But what exactly goes in? And how do archives work?
So if somebody would like to keep records in the archives, they can fill out a transfer form, which would come to me, and then we would discuss transferring the actual materials or records to me. That way we keep a record of actually what comes here. So that's important, so we know what came and when it came. And as things come to me, I have to work out and filter through the records, what we want to keep, what's a necessity and what's not. So once things have been put into folders, organized into boxes, they go into record groups in my Microsoft Access database. I try and make things as specific as possible, as realistically as possible too. And the database then through Microsoft Access is searchable, which works out quite well. I'm able to add photographs and things as the need be. Time is, of course, the biggest issue, next to space.
So plenty of departments, not just academic, consider the archives for document deposits. Sure, but what can we access as public domain?
Well, public domain, things that other people will be able to see, would be things that have been published before. So any of our faculty publications, staff publications, campus publications, student publications, from yearbooks to our literary publication, our catalogs, any of those things could be made public. So if people have questions and need to see any of that, those are the easiest ones. The photographs that come to the archives, we own. Those can be shared because we specifically own those.
And while John Carroll University is a primarily white institution, there's still a strong set of minority communities on and off campus. So how do archives reflect, or not, multicultural diversity at John Carroll?
We have files and we try to keep them organized, but archivists, I believe, have different modes of keeping information manageable and understandable, just like libraries have different ways of organizing books. So for me, we're moving in a direction where our information is being tracked, but we're going back a couple of, actually several years, actually decades. And so that's going to require some time for us to put it all together. First, see it, right? Assess what we have. Make the information manageable for us to interpret. And then we're going to reach a point where we'll be able to share the history through our archives. We're not there yet. Remember when you did your internship, we had to pick dates and pick a range because we couldn't do the entire history of the center in depth. We had to do a deep dive in certain years because that's where we could find information. So that's where the investigation piece comes. We have a lot of information that's missing by year. And then sometimes, kind of like in a movie, I opened up a file cabinet or closet and there were files. And so I found some information over the winter break that I was able to share with our new intern, Shanice Winston.
I think it plays an important role, like in the multiculturals. If you really want to know, like where we've been, how far we have come, the archives is a good source for that. Because if you didn't have the archives, you wouldn't know half of the information, like how we actually came to be. Especially like the CSDI. Like I didn't really know much about it, honestly. Before starting this project, I just knew that it was a multicultural center, but I didn't really like know much about it, if that makes sense. But the archives, like been meeting up with Laureen and been jotting different things around. Also, Chen was a good source. He provided different facts about the center, like the history behind it, and he actually got that information from the archives, which is pretty interesting. So the archives is just in general is a good source to use. A lot of people don't really even know about it, but it's really a good source.
Much time and effort has gone in to making this university all-inclusive. And as a Catholic university, we are inclusive just by nature. It is a natural part of who we are as Catholics to be welcoming to all others. And we have the proof of that within our archival records. We've seen what work and what effort and what finances have gone into making John Carroll University a diverse educational facility. And I feel quite confident in saying that. So I think we've passed that point.
I think they're important for transparency in making sure that we could tell our story as an office and as a university in a way that is meaningful. And meaningful doesn't always mean positive. Sometimes there have been incidents on campus and in the city that are tremendously tragic, difficult to understand why these things could happen to individuals or to groups. But our responsibility, I believe, as a department, and also as archivists, and also as journalists, is to tell the truth.
And finally, let's check out some of the facts, documents, photos, and other supporting details from archives about multiculturalism and diversity.
Some of the news stories from like old Carroll News articles, especially for example, in 2000, I believe in 10, the Ally Student Organization had a demonstration at one of the basketball games, and they were demonstrating to make sure that our diversity statement and non-discrimination statement included sexual orientation and gender identity. And so it was an important piece of history that our current Ally students should know about.
Well, actually, it was interesting to find out that John Carroll used to actually have a black theater, and I never even thought like an institution, like a predominantly white institution, would actually have a black theater. So that was interesting to know. It's like, wow, like why did they get rid of it, and different things like that. It was really cool to learn about that. Also, that the Multicultural Center, also known as CSDI, was actually founded by a white guy. I know this might sound like strange, but that was really interesting because you would think it would be somebody of a person of color. It was actually a white individual, and that was really amazing to me to see someone actually start something to learn more, I guess, about the culture, like to attract more student of colors to the center and the university as a whole. I was really interested. I'm still doing more research as we currently speak, but I think it's so far the archives have really been very helpful in this process, because if I didn't have the archives, I wouldn't even know like half of the history of CSDI, since I'm doing a documentary about it.
And it was just so encouraging to know that from the 1930s, at least as early from then, that we could see that we worked toward, not excluding people because of their color. And that was, and it was very natural. Nobody talked about, oh, this was somebody who was a person of color or different than anybody else. It just was a very natural inclusion, and I think that's what we need to work toward in our future anyway.
With archive studies being more prevalent in today's colleges and universities, it's now becoming more increasingly important to have our own departments to keep them and to preserve them unbiasedly. And with regards to multiculturalism and diversity, it's important to make sure that we keep all sides of the truth, not just what we want to believe.